you mentioned your love for a couple of other artists. Bob Dylan, when you try and pick some Bob Dylan songs that you love off the top of your head, very difficult because there's so many, I'm sure. What are the first that come to mind?
Times Are Changing is just unbelievable. I think it's one of those songs where it's so big. Yeah, and I think this every now and then. I think this about, with like bands like the Killers as well. Like, Mr. Brightside is a song that probably everybody in the world has heard 100+ times. And the same with Bob Dylan, like Times Are Changing. But every now and then, and the same with Wonderwall. I was thinking this of Wonderwall as well by Oasis the other day. There's a reason you hear those songs so many times, and you sit back and you listen to them and you're like, oh my God. But then songs like One More Pot of Coffee is amazing. And actually, I really got back into that as well recently because Tom Jones, I don't know if you know, Tom Jones released like a covers record and he covered that song. I mean, I do not know how that man has that voice at that age, but he could put all of us to shame, Tom Jones. So yeah, Tom Jones covering Dylan was a good time. I imagine most people that are fans of Architects don't really care for Tom Jones or Bob Dylan, but I do, so they have to put up with it.
I'll tell you a quick story. I was out on the road once. It was either with Slipknot or Stone Sour, but I'm in the front lounge of the bus and we're in the Midwest driving somewhere to a next gig. And I'm talking to Jim Root. And Jim looked at me and said, hey, if there was somebody that I could look at their career and learn from, who would you suggest? And I said, Tom Jones.
Yeah.
And he kind of laughed a little bit. And I said, Jim, anyone who has had a top 10 record in 5 different decades is worth learning from.
Yeah.
And he went, oh, yeah, it makes sense. And I got to tell you, quick aside, since you're obviously a fan, Tom Jones was one of the coolest people I ever met. I spent 4 or 5 hours with him once doing radio interviewee stuff. And he was without a doubt one of the coolest human beings I have ever met in my life.
Yeah. And he's met and done everything. He had a #1 record here like a month ago. It was like, it's like, that doesn't happen for a lot of artists. A lot of artists don't get one #1, and as you say, like, he's done it in every era. And I think you just have to appreciate, talent when it's there and appreciate it while it's still around, because so often these people, these incredible musicians go and then everybody's like, well, why didn't we tell them when they were here, and why didn't we celebrate them when they were here? And I think that's what's so important, is to tell and to reach out and still buy those records. It's important.
Certainly, I would think the top of that list would be Sir Paul McCartney. As you and I do this interview today, is you say it's his birthday? Happy birthday,
79,
Paul McCartney, 79. Yeah. Your favorite McCartney songs? Perhaps any stories if you've ever seen or met him? Because to me, he's the best there ever was that ever will be. So go ahead.
Yeah, he's an absolute genius. I think one thing that really gets me going is Ram is obviously just an insane piece of music.
Full stop. Before we did this interview, I was listening to Ram. I swear to God, I interrupted my Ram listening to do the interview with you. I swear to God in heaven. Sorry for the interruption.
It's all good, man. It's just they're the best. It's the best. But I think the thing that when I've listened to a lot of interviews and a lot of documentaries and stuff is Ringo always says that if it wasn't for Paul, there wouldn't be that body of work that the Beatles put out, because him and Lennon and George would be off doing their own things and they'd hear the phone ring and be like, he's after us again. Like, he wants us to go into the studio. And I love that drive. And the fact that drive is still there at 79 is unbelievable. He just put out McCartney 3 last year and that got a #1, and then he put out McCartney 3 with the remix record with like
the
Queen,
Imagined,
Queens and Phoebe Bridgers and these amazing. He's got his ear to the ground clearly. Saint Vincent and Damon Albarn, and it was unbelievable, and that got to #1. So you have to I think admire the man and again the generations of people that he's inspired to pick up instruments. I think my earliest memories is listening to the Beatles and in particular listening to McCartney, and Band on the Run was a favorite in our house. So I think you got to respect them while they're here. And like anytime there's a tour with him, I'll be there.
There was a multi-day music memorabilia auction through they're a great auction house, Julian's Live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And there was an original Ram promotional poster, and I thought, ooh, I
Yeah.
might be able to get this for not too much. And I'm about to bid like, I don't know, like $150. And before I can even hit 150, it shoots up to like $800 right before my eyes. And I'm like, well, that's getting away from me.
Yeah, there's some really crazy ones. I spend most of my life looking at that stuff because I'm like, I'll get it if I can, if I can see it. And I saw one recently much like that. There was like a Help release, like a poster that was in cinemas when that first came out. And again, it started at like $400. I was like, oh, well, why not? We just had #1 record. This can be my treat. Well done, man. And then literally went to the bathroom, came back, and it was like, oh, $3,000 for a bit of paper. Okay, I'm good.
Well, one of the hallmarks of McCartney and the Beatles' career was, of course, Abbey Road Studios, where you guys have gotten to go in and work. Tell me about that place. Tell me about the vibes there. Tell me about everything. I've been outside it, and there is a palpable sense that there's some sort of magic in that area, at least to me. Maybe it was in my head.
We've done a few things in there, like a lot of things actually in there recently, and a couple of the engineers that were in there have said that we're the new house band. So now I get them to call us the Fab Five when we go in. Like, that's what you have to call us. But it is insane. It really is. We've been very fortunate to have been in a lot of studios around the world where some great records have been made. But when you walk into Studio 2, it's magic. And I'm not one of those people that really buys into that stuff, but it is nothing's changed. They can't change much in the building, so they haven't like made it all brand new. It's a registered building, so the things that are up in the walls and the padding and everything is exactly the same as it was in 69 when they had to go back and finish Abbey Road there, or when they did Abbey Road there, and then when they did Let It Be and they had to come back in and go into like Studio 3 because they couldn't get Studio 2, and it all looks identical. And yeah, for a kid that grew up reading books about that place and the amount of incredible moments that have happened in there, it's magic. When you go in, the fact that my voice and our songs is bouncing off the same walls that Dear Prudence was recorded in is unbelievable.
When you get to a place like that, Abbey Road, or when it's a live performance in some place like Royal Albert Hall, does it take you a moment to get over that awe, and then you're able to actually get down to business?
Yeah, I think that's the key. Is that it's so, if you get lost in it, you start thinking about everything that got you to that point as well, because you're so like, wow, I can't, how has this happened? Because we're constantly trying to just stay on the ball and not really sit back and think about stuff too much, because there's plenty of time for that. You just got to enjoy the moment. But yeah, it's really like you have to take a big breath at those points. It's not just another show. It's a real historical moment for the group. And I think especially for myself, moments like Abbey Road are stuff that I've dreamed of and will never pass down the opportunity of going there. So yeah, I think things like my dad is such a massive Beatles fan, and anytime we get to do stuff like that, I just think, okay, next time you can come, because he was supposed to come to one of the last things we did there, but obviously with all the COVID and stuff, there's only a certain amount of people that are allowed in the room. So I'm always like, okay, we'll just do another record there. We'll go there and we'll finish it there, and he can come and see it then.
And one last thing about the Abbey Road, when you're walking around there, are you keeping your eye on the floor thinking, oh, maybe someone missed a George Harrison guitar pick I can pick up and take home, or anything like that?
Yeah, they have there's a few things in there where there's like the piano from Lady Madonna, and there's also the piano from While My Guitar Gently Weeps in there as well. So there's two pianos that they've used on multiple records. And at the end of a session once, I just wasn't even thinking, and I just was sat in there and just put my beer on top of the piano and was just sat playing the piano. And someone walked over and was like, "You should probably take that off." I was like, you are not wrong. I will take that off right now. And then I just thought, somewhere Lennon's looking out, going, "No, you can keep that on, man."
There you go. That, yeah.
Yeah. Do you enjoy that?
One last thing. You know, you guys have had number ones and you've had a phenomenal amount of success, and you know, you've obviously overcome some real blocks that have gone up in your path. Does success just make you hungrier or give you more drive to keep succeeding? Do you just think, oh, we hit this, but we can't rest on our laurels, we got to keep, you know, does it sort of fire you up more?
I think a thing that hit me recently was, I think it's never the moment that you're in where you are really that happy. It's almost like everything before today is great, you know, and today I'm just doing stuff, or we can do a show or whatever, but then in a month's time when you look back, you're always like, that was really great, you know. But I always like to just try, as you say, and just keep an eye on the ball. And you know, I actually, when I think about things, when I think back to like our first tour of America, like 13-14 years ago, whenever it was, and our first tours in Europe when we were in the van together, and you know, it was the 5 of us and a driver just traveling around and sleeping in the van for 7 weeks. You know, at the time I was like, this is miserable. I'm sleeping on the floor, and my back is in two. I've got the back of a 40-year-old at the age of 20. But now when I look back, I'm like, those were the best days. Those were the absolute best days. They were just the time of our lives where we were just, it just felt like us against the world, and nothing's really changed, you know. I've just got to wait for time to come back, and then you look back on this tour and go, that was unbelievable. You know, every day that this band gets to do stuff is a blessing. I really think so. And I really think after releasing 9 albums to have the success we have now, and every record seemingly getting larger and larger, is, I don't know many bands that's happened to. So we all feel very, very grateful and very happy to be alive and to be creating and putting out what we think is the best stuff we can.
Those are lovely thoughts to close on. However, I will ask you for one last quick aside. Is there any way, to someone who has never been out on the road or never toured, can you make someone understand the utter horror of the smell of a rock band van after 6 or 7 weeks?
I'll tell you a story that I don't think I've told before. I think it was the first time we went to America. We weren't made of money at the time, so there was no such thing as stage shoes and show shoes. It was like, these are your shoes for the tour. So about halfway through the tour, we're sleeping in the van, and I'm like, oh no, I know someone's going to say something. I can smell my shoes as I take my shoes off, because you know, you're living in them for 6 weeks. You're on tour, you're playing shows, and you're sweating a lot, you know. And then people did notice, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to sleep on the roof of the van. You know, so I got out of the van and slept on the roof of the van, and had to make sure that the driver didn't drive off with me on the roof of the van, and slept with my feet sort of, oh no, was it that? It was the trailer of the van, sorry. I slept in the trailer at the back. I moved all the merch boxes and slept in there with the trailer open. So that was a high point. And then the next day I bought some shoes that weren't very nice, but they were clean.
Although I would have to think, you know, instead of crunched up in the van, sleeping on a bed of t-shirts sounds fairly luxurious in comparison.
I wasn't complaining, you know, I just said what happened.